Trends with Benefits is the 17th episode of the 12th season of CSI, and it's not necessarily the most interesting episode, and I think I've identified why that's the case, but I think it's one of the most important with the message that it has, or the story that it has to tell, so I can't really fault it for that. So there will be spoilers as I discuss what happens in this. And I think the reason that I personally don't like it as much as the other episodes that have come before this in season 12 is because it lacks the thing that makes CSI really brilliant. And that's a strong attention to detail when it comes to close-ups of bodies and graphic details and a lot of information about investigation. And the closest we really came to in this is the bit where they were looking at whether it would be possible for somebody to reach 8 foot up a pole, and we get a demonstration of that. But beyond that, we don't get a lot of what we usually get. But at the same time, the story is really good. So it's not what I look for in a CSI episode. It's not what I love in a CSI episode. I feel like this story could have come out of pretty much any crime drama, whereas CSI is actually quite special and quite unique in a lot of ways. This story doesn't really lend itself to that, but it's still really interesting. It starts off with a party. I actually feel like the intro scene was way longer than it needed to be, but we have a student turning up dead, and the episode is all about trying to work out who killed him. And I didn't work it out, but I did find a lot of the suspects to be quite boring. I just didn't think the narrative was that interesting. But as I said, it is quite important, so I am now going to say exactly what happened and how this death came about. So this happened because one of the professors at the university has been sleeping with students. And our victim, I hesitate to use the word victim once we find out what we know, but our dead body, let's put it that way, had a video of this, and the student in the video was going to jump off of a ledge, and he approached her trying to calm her down, but she saw he had his phone out and maybe fairly, maybe unfairly assumed that he was actually still taking advantage of the situation, and he ended up falling off the ledge, and that's how he died. And that is not that interesting as far as deaths in CSI go. But the fact that it's making known this horrendous activity in a university, and the fact that this professor actually raped one of his students, is an important conversation to have. I'm not saying it happens in every university, but this episode shows that it can happen, and people might not know about it, and you never know what somebody is going through. And I think it's an important story, but it's not necessarily the most fascinating for an episode of CSI. So it was good, but compared to pretty much every CSI episode, it was lacking the thing that makes CSI special, and that's a bit of a shame. But at the same time, there wasn't really scope for that. They didn't need to have gory details and graphic content. We did have some swabs and things, so there was some science to it, but most of it was just about interrogation. And while I ordinarily love that, it's not what makes CSI special. So on its own, it's okay. Compared to every other CSI episode that I've watched, it felt like it was lacking. But in general, I can't really fault it too much. Trends with Benefits is still a pretty worthwhile episode.